Hi everyone, Sol here. Before this episode starts, I wanted to let you know that if you want to sponsor an episode of Inflight, you now can by contacting Magnus at thresholdx.net. That's Magnus at thresholdx.net. Thank you for listening, and now, on to this week's episode. Hey everyone. Welcome back to this episode of Inflight. I'm Sol, your host. It is great to be here with you guys today. I hope you guys are enjoying the spring weather. In New York, we've had a lot of wind and rain lately as a result of the fronts coming together to bring the warm weather back and fighting against the cold weather. And although a lot of people don't normally like spring weather and fall weather for that matter, because at least in New York, it has a lot of wind and rain, which is often associated with being a gloomy type of weather. I actually quite like it, especially now when we are still under pretty strict quarantine here in New York City. I feel as if it's a reason to be inside. And I've said that before on the show a few times, but I'll say it again. I really like the weather that we're having. And in a few days, actually, I believe it's on Thursday, which is the day that this podcast episode is going to air. We're going to get thunderstorms, which are my favorite, and they're even more my favorite right now. So I'm kind of in weather heaven, even if it's not the type of weather that's good for flying. As I've experienced, there's wind widespread across the country, and it has made some landings a little bit more difficult than they usually are. It still is really, really good for the head, you know? Another thing that I've been focusing on during this spring season, besides my affection towards the weather that we're having here in New York, is friends. And I've really been connecting with my friends since I'm not going to be seeing a lot of them soon, as I am moving schools next year and trying to get to know new people. And that human interaction has been very nice, especially in quarantine, where it seems like we're kind of stripped from that. Like I've noticed a few things happening with myself that are a result, I think, of having less human contact, like having a really difficult time getting my thoughts out of my mouth sometimes. Sometimes it takes one or two takes for me to do these intros here and there because I just start speaking gibberish, and then it takes me like 2 minutes to say, "Hi, how are you?" or like something along those lines. And checking in with friends is definitely really nice because it's kind of like exercising that part of my brain, you know. And that's something that I think that I'm missing right now, and you know, it'll come back soon. But right now we are where we are. I hope that you guys are doing okay through quarantine. If you're in one of those countries or one of those states that is starting to open up, I'm really happy for you. Just continue to social distance a little bit so that we don't have to have a completely devastating second wave like other countries around the world have seen. I know that if I'm allowed back outside, actually, when I'm allowed back outside, because I'm not going to be trapped inside forever, that I think it would be way harder to go back to something like this after having that freedom. So, you know, my personal wish is that people continue to take this seriously after everything kind of opens up again. But if you're still locked inside like I am, then I hope you are well, and I hope that you're talking to friends and exercising that part of your brain. You may be asking yourself, Sol, why are you going on this little tangent here? This is not early days of Inflight where you awkwardly talk about what's happening in your life to a bunch of people who don't understand what you're talking about. And there's actually a very specific reason for it. Our guest today is Q8Pilot, who is a very, very cherished member of our community. He is more the Explain community, but I know he's done some P3D videos as well, so I'm sure there are some people from that side who know him and who respect him, and respect him. We interviewed Q8Pilot today, who, as some of you may know, if you are a regular viewer of him, he retired a few months ago from flight simulation because he needed a break. He had been doing it for so long, and In his video, he specifically said he just wasn't that inspired to make videos anymore. But recently, he's been uploading a lot more, and he has a live stream that he's been doing fairly regularly as well. And he's pretty active again. And Q8 has also done some work with us, and uh, we found out about his return just as you guys did. And I figured that this would be a really great opportunity to reach out to him and see whether or not he wanted to be on the show to talk to us a little bit about what he went through that brought him to the decision that he made to come back, and maybe go into a little bit more detail about where he was beforehand and why he made a decision to leave in the first place. And I reached out to him, and he said that he wanted to be on the show, and that's the exact conversation that we had. So coming up in this interview, Q8, Norm, and myself, we talk about the regular stuff that we do. We learn a little bit more about Q8's life, how he got into flight simulation, and we also talk about the people and the followers of his that really inspired him to continue on and record new videos again and become active again. And it was really a great conversation, and it was a conversation of friendship, which is the reason why I went on that tangent in the beginning. So I really hope you guys enjoy this conversation with Q8Pilot. We will be having another episode coming out very shortly because we've been getting a lot of recordings in, and everything has been going really well, and we've had a lot of people reaching out to be on. So I am trying to get them out for you guys as much as possible. So please help me welcome Q8Pilot. Q8, thank you so much for joining us today. How has your evening been? I know that it's really late for you. Norm and I, it's 2 p.m. It's around 9 p.m. for you. How have you been?
Well, thanks for having me. First of all, it's been a slow day, if you will. But yeah, I'm doing great. I hope you guys are doing fine as well.
Yeah, it's a little rainy here on the East Coast, but it's nothing too terrible. And it's also a nice excuse to be inside on those days. It makes it feel like you're actually supposed to be inside.
True.
um, so let's get to know you a little bit. What's your background? How did you get into aviation? And how did you decide that the video format that you're most well known for was what you wanted to do?
Well, aviation is not something new to me. Flight sim, probably making videos is a new thing. So I've been making videos for the past say 5 years, minus the pause, the 3 months pause that you guys probably know about. Um, but aviation has been always something I've always been fascinated by, just the sheer view of aircraft taking off and landing. Even as a little kid, I was very interested in becoming a pilot, and I always told my parents that I wanted to be a pilot. But back then, it wasn't very easy. The access to information was not very easy. So it all started when I was actually a college student in the US. And on one fine day, I believe it was Christmas Eve of 1994. I can't remember the year, but I was planning a Christmas gift for my girlfriend,
Hmm.
and I didn't really know what to do. I wasn't very creative in that department. So I decided to open the yellow pages and look for something, and I saw an ad for some Captain Lee, former
Mhm.
United States Air Force. He's retired, and he does tours in small airplanes. So I thought that was
Mhm.
a good idea, and we chartered the plane. We got on the plane. We took off from Fresno, Yosemite, and we flew around. We went to Harris Ranch. We had some steaks. And on the way back, I started just asking all kinds of questions about all the buttons, the gauges, the instruments.
Hmm.
And that was pretty much, what sparked the interest that I've always had as a little boy about aircraft and just being up in the air. I've done a few lessons. I've done takeoff lessons, landing lessons, but it was actually a bit expensive
Mm.
for me as a student, as a sponsor student by the government of Kuwait. It wasn't very, you know, it wasn't cheap to get flying lessons at that time. So I had to do with the takeoffs and landings. I did a little bit of ground school, and then I called it quits. And of course, I had college to finish, so I had to focus on my studies. So
Hmm.
that was really what sparked the love for aviation, or the continuation of that interest. But 5 years ago, by the way, I've always used Flight Sim. So since the Amiga Commodore, I've used Flight Sim. I used to always buy software where you can fly airplanes or space shuttles or things like that.
Hmm.
But 5 years ago is when I was actually introduced to X-Plane. And believe it or not, when I actually got X-Plane, I thought that it was rubbish. I thought it was really bad, and this plausible world thing. And I remember writing a really harsh review on Amazon, and yeah, it was a really really harsh review on Amazon. It was Explain 10.3, if I'm not mistaken, or 2.9 or something like that. It was an older version of Explain. And little by little, of course, Explain started, improving, and I started downloading those add-ons, and I became very, very interested in Explain and played Element Theory. Being a developer myself, I started reading a lot more about it, understanding what the differences are between, for example, FSX at that time and Explain, the flight modeling, and all of those good things.
Hmm.
And that really that really sparked the interest in flight simulation again, and really making videos, because as I was doing the flight simulation, I was flying and doing flights. I had a lot of questions. Obviously, there were a lot of things I didn't know how to do. So some of those questions were answered by just doing searches, and some of those things really took a lot of time for me to find the answers for, and some things were just by trial and error.
Mm.
And I thought, if I had to spend that much time and I finally found the answer, it might be a cool idea if I shared it with someone. I'm sure someone else in this world is probably having the same issue. So
Oh
why
yeah.
don't I, create a video or a forum of some sort and start sharing, what I find to help people. And that was the idea behind starting the channel. And I remember one of the first tutorials I posted was about fixing the ILS alignment in X-Plane 10. And I got a lot of really nasty comments on that video, but but nevertheless, here I am today. The format, of course, developed over a period of time. If you look at my very first videos, they were I was really happy just by recording a landing,
Yeah.
or just doing a few things in an airplane, takeoff, land, or crash, or something like that, and just record it. Some of those videos I've removed, obviously, because they made no sense. But
Hmm.
I did leave the very first video was an Airbus landing at Doha International Airport in Qatar. I left that video because it really shows the viewer where the channel was and where it is now. And it's kind of a reminder also for me of how much effort I put in, how much I had to learn to be able to get to the point where I am today.
No, that's actually a very great idea or thing to do. I might keep that in mind for myself too, just to see the progression of how far you've come. I've actually used that ILS tutorial video when I just got into Explain 10 myself. So
Oh, very good.
I must say that your videos has been some of the tutorials that I've used when just getting accustomed to Explain. What I keep forgetting sometimes when people ask me questions is like, when I started, I knew nothing. And you have so many questions that you want answers to. You just don't get in front of the simulator and start flying and you're good. There's so many things you can customize and set up. And your channel has served as the encyclopedia for fixing stuff and reviewing stuff. So no, it's true. It's
Well,
true.
thank you
So,
very much. I appreciate that.
yeah,
I'm humbled.
definitely. You came into play, right away, considering that you ravaged Explain in a review back in the day. So that's good. Though. But yeah, keep going, man. This is fascinating for me to hear. I like that.
Yeah, I actually looked at your channel as you were talking about it, and I can see all the way back with some of the Microsoft. I think you used Microsoft Flight Simulator earlier, right? As
Yes,
because I
that's
know,
correct.
yeah, I can like see all of those, and it's crazy because that's what you just said is something that we have heard a few times on the show before, where people who have gotten into X-Plane have just really disliked it in the beginning, but then after a while, it's kind of grown on them, and especially X-Plane 11. I mean, Norm and I have talked a lot about how, like with other guests, about how X-Plane 11 was like the defining simulation, like the defining version for people to really hop into it. Um, yeah, it's really, I've never actually looked back on your channel, but it's nice to look back at it now and see all the really supportive comments that people leave and all the people thanking you, and all of that. What is it like for you to receive such positive support from people?
Oh, let me tell you guys. Of course, you know that I have made a decision about 4 months ago to
Mhm.
stop making videos,
Yep.
and I started making videos. Recently I posted a couple of videos, maybe three of them or so, and of course the reasons why I come to that conclusion or to that decision, I've noted in my video labeled the finale,
Mhm.
and just the amount of comments I've received made me tearful, because I never really thought I had that much influence in the community. I never really thought I was that loved. Um, and a lot of people have asked me to reconsider. And at the time, I was just really down, and I felt that the decision is final. I'm moving on, moving to something else. I never really, by the way, moved away from doing flight sim. I was, in fact, invited to the Microsoft 2020 Alpha, so I'm one of the actually Alpha users now.
Mm.
So I kept buying add-ons, but I just didn't feel the motivation to make videos. And I will be very frank and let you know that Simmer or Shane has sent me emails. Thomas Rasmussen,
Mhm.
Flight Deck to Sim, V1 Simulations. They've all sent me emails, and um, they've comforted me, and especially Shane and Flight Deck to Sim have sent me emails to make me change my mind, really, and those guys are part of the reason why I came back. Although I am strictly saying that I don't want any commitments and I don't want to stick to a specific schedule. Um, but in their own words, they said, "You're a very well respected, well loved guy in the community. For that, come back."
Wow.
And it was very touching to receive all those emails. And I've received a lot of emails from the regular subscribers. I know a guy by the name of Rand. Rand is a longtime supporter of the channel, and he sent me as well an email asking me to. He hasn't asked me to come back, but just expressing his support and just the sheer kindness of people has really touched me in a way I've never felt before. And I do have a huge following on the channel. So we're talking about, 40 something, 45,000 followers on the channel.
Mm.
So I thought, for those few who probably hate me, I don't have anything, personal against them, and it's probably not personal. And they just maybe hate the name, maybe, uh,
They will find something to
because
hate.
they don't really see the person behind the mic, and I understand that. I'm not a young chap, I'm 45 years old, so.
Jeez.
So I understand life very well. I understand there are a lot of immature people, and I understand that there are people who don't really understand that there is another human being with feelings, and that his feelings could get hurt. They just don't understand that, and that's okay.
Mhm.
But for the vast majority, I think my subscribers, my supporters, such as yourselves, such as V1 Simulation, Brand Cooley, Silvio, if I can name them all, I would. For those
Mhm.
people, I have decided to come back and start making videos again.
On the same topic of motivation, hearing from your fans and hearing from everybody how much you've touched them, I mean, what else did you call on, or what else did you use as motivation over all these years to keep producing these videos? Where does your motivation come from, or where did it come from back in the day?
Well, back in the day, it was just really my passion for aviation, for really wanting to help people enjoy flight simulation. I understand that there are a lot of people who have a lot of love for aviation. Some of them actually were inspired to become real pilots, and they have become real pilots after watching, some of my videos. To me, that was the most inspiring, is to hear back from people telling me, oh, by the way, I've watched your so and so video, and based on that, I'm enrolled now and I'm getting my type rating. And then I follow them, so I kind of send them emails, so how are you doing now? And they just say, come back and say, well, I'm a 737 pilot, I'm an Airbus pilot. And that to me is the most rewarding thing,
Mm.
getting a thank you for posting something that someone was able to learn something from, was the motivation. As you know, I'm not after the money. I make a very good living for me and my family, so I'm
Mhm.
not really on YouTube or Twitch or any of those social media to make money. I'm there
Mhm.
really to help people and enjoy myself and enjoy creating content.
It's for me, when you mentioned some names that I'm very familiar with, like Thomas Rasmussen and Flight Deck 2 Sim, like it's really touching to see that they're the ones in essence who helped bring you back to um, uploading videos. Because I've talked with Thomas, and Thomas is a really great guy, and he's super friendly. And I remember working really hard with him on his episode, and constantly talking before it came out, and really just having a great time with him. And it just shows how genuinely kind all those people are, and it's really nice to see that they cared about you so much that they wanted to see you back. Like, I hadn't I had assumed that part of it had to do with the really kind comments that you got on your farewell video,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
I hadn't assumed that it had been like people who were actually in the community who were friends with you that really helped you through that. That's really sweet of them, honestly.
That is very sweet indeed. Yeah, Thomas and I go way, way back. Simply because when I started with the flight simulation, he was an inspiration to me. He makes the best cinematic.
Oh
No
yeah.
one comes close to Thomas.
Oh yeah.
His abilities in video editing are just second to none. So we've done a lot of giveaways together. We've chatted. We've shared frustration over a few things in the community, some things that, both Thomas and I felt that were toxic. So we used to vent to one another a lot during that time. Um, since he's moved his house, I think he got busy and with life, and we're not in contact as much. But I know that he's the type of person that if I send an email to him and say, Thomas, I need your help with something, he will immediately respond. And that's how it's been with Thomas. He's really a great guy.
That's good to know that you guys actually share somewhat of the same space as far as videos are concerned on YouTube and so forth, but you guys communicate regardless and possibly share ideas and so forth. It's good to know that you guys get along so good. I didn't even know you guys knew each other. So that's awesome to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So switching gears a little bit, you talked about how you got into this, how it stemmed from you spending a lot of time on your own researching how to do specific things on airplanes that you were flying, and how you felt that other people could use that too, so that they didn't have to spend as much time with you. Has the sorry, as you have, so has the research process changed for videos, or has it kind of stayed the same? And if it has changed, like how has it changed? And if it hasn't changed, like what is your research process for videos?
Right. So there are different types of videos that I do. There are tutorials, there are full flights, and there are reviews.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the the most questionable ones are the reviews, probably.
Mm-hmm.
But let me tell you what is the process that I go through for any video, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit what I do different for the different formats. So for a review, there are a few things that I do different than the full flight, and different from when I do a tutorial. Normally, the process is a process where I just do a lot of brainstorming. So I begin with brainstorming the idea of the video on a piece of paper or on my tablet. I
Mm-hmm.
just write lots of circles, what the video is going to be about, what do I want to show in that video. Sometimes I get carried away with things, and then I say, no, that's probably going to be too long. Let me cut here. Let me cut there. And once I
Mm-hmm.
do that, then I start actually designing the video on like a PowerPoint. So I have a PowerPoint where I just kind of write in the bullets, what is the video, how is the video going to flow, with little
Mm-hmm.
boxes and workflows and things like that, how I'm going to end the video. When I come to recording, that's probably the most difficult part, because I can very seldom find a time where my son is asleep. He's 6 years old, so it's very difficult to find the time. So this is actually a good time, because I made sure he goes to bed before I started this with you guys. So he's sound asleep now.
Good.
So finding the right time is quite difficult for me. But when I do find the time, I start recording the video. And sometimes I actually record the video over a period of few days. I don't really worry too much about making mistakes, because I will edit those out. And once I'm done recording the video, so I've ticked on my checklist on the PowerPoint that I've done, I put
Mm.
tick, tick, everything's done there. I've done whatever I want to do. Now I go to the editing. Once I do the editing and finish with the editing, I actually watch the video, the entire video, without rendering it. I just watch the video with my headphone
Mm.
connected, and just look out for anything that I might have said that's not right, or maybe something that I want to change. Or sometimes I actually end up deleting the whole video if I don't feel
Jeez.
that it's, yeah, if I don't feel that it's of the quality that I want to put on the channel, then it goes to the trash can and I start
Mm-hmm.
over. In fact, I've done maybe the total videos that I've trashed is over 50.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, so I just reach the point where I say no, that video is not good enough. It's a personality thing, I guess. Maybe I'm somewhat of a perfectionist, and I just want to do things right. And I will tell you something else related to this in a minute. But
Mm.
this is normally this is normally the process of creating the video. So there is a research brainstorming, there is the actual development of the video, which is the recording, there is the quality check, and then there is the deployment or launching it on YouTube. A very kind of developer like process, because that's what developers normally do if you're
Mm.
following a waterfall approach in software development. um, Now, for the reviews, for example, it's a little different, because when I do a review, it depends on the title of the video. If I'm going to say it's a review, then I have to go read about the aircraft, look at footage of the aircraft, both external and internal, and then I have to actually test the add on. I do watch a lot of videos of the real aircraft being flown in real life.
Oh,
Mm.
So I kind of look at stall behavior, read about it on forums of the real aircraft, so that when I come to the sim, there is a point of reference that I can relate to. And that's when I say, for example, you hear me say, this aircraft flies very well, it's very fluid, the flight modeling is great. So it's not because I've flown an aircraft, and I get nasty comments about that. Oh, have you flown this aircraft before? How do you know it's good?
Yeah.
That
jeez.
sort of thing. So, but yeah, I depend a lot on what real pilots do in real life, and I try to translate that into the sim. And then, of course, I have to look at how well the aircraft documentation is. For
Mm.
example, I've recently done a review on the Vulcan by Just Flight.
Great video. Watched it.
Oh, thank you. It's a marvelous aircraft, and they've done a very, very good job on modeling the aircraft and modeling the systems that they've modeled. But if you look at the documentation, for example, I gave it a lower than usual score. The reason being, um, if you look at their instructions, they actually have the instruction and they have a picture. The picture has so many instruments, and they're saying, turn the battery on. There's one battery switch and the transformers. So you look in the picture, you don't know where those transformers are. So it would have
Mm.
been better, for example, if they were circled or highlighted in a different color. That would
Mm.
have been better in my view. So, of course, it's just an example that I'm giving. I'm not, in any way talking down on the add-on itself. I think it's a great add-on, but this is the kind of level of detail that I go into when I actually do the review. So I look at the aircraft behavior compared to what's there in real life. I look at the footage, pictures, videos, whatever I can put my hands on. I then fly the aircraft in the sim. I sometimes use, there's a great tool. I've done also a video on Sim Toolkit Pro.
Mm-hmm.
So I do like different setup for the approach with different wind directions and speeds, and I see if that actually compares to what happens in real life, bearing in mind there are a lot of limitations in X-Plane in terms of the flight model. So all of that research goes into the review, and then of course I start for each category, give a score, and then I decide at the end whether I'm going to give this like a platinum score, a platinum plaque, or uh, silver or bronze or gold or whatever. Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
this is normally associated with something when I say a review.
Mm.
When the video is a first impressions video, it's a different ballgame. A first
Mm.
impressions video puts a lot less pressure on me. So you'll find in my earlier days, there were a lot more first impression rather than a review, because in a first impression video, it's more of a casual thing. I'm
Mm.
just hopping in the sim, And these are my first impression of this aircraft. No research done. I'll probably rely on some of my previous knowledge of this add-on, but not necessarily, a detailed review of the add-on. So first impressions video is a lot easier to do, in my view. It doesn't require all the research. But when I say review, I feel it's my responsibility towards the community to put sufficient information for them to be able to decide whether they want to make an investment or not. And I normally recommend yes or no, but of course it's up to them based on what they see in the sim. Some people agree, some people don't. But for the most part, I receive positive comments about the reviews. And those who heed the advice I give in the video have been very happy.
Yeah, I kind of suspected that you actually did put in this much time into your reviews, because when you watch
Yeah,
it, normally I go to 5, 6 different locations to find out about a particular add-on or aircraft, just to cross-reference in my own head and pick out what I need to pick out to see if it's good or not. With your reviews, you usually get a lot of information, more than you need, to be honest, to make a decision if to buy the product. So I actually love the fact that, or now love the fact that you actually do all this research into it before you present it to the audience, because that's, to me, that's a great thing, man. But let me ask you this: you have reviews, you have first impressions, you also have live streams. How would you compare the difference with the reviews and the live streams and so forth? What do you do differently in the live streams versus the first impression videos and so forth? And also, do you prefer live streams or prefer recording?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm very new to live streams. The reason being, for the longest time, we here in Kuwait, all the actual streaming servers are far from us, so there is always a high latency. So recently, I've upgraded the internet, and I have upload and download speeds that are reasonable for streaming. So I'm very very new to streaming. Look, there are advantages and disadvantages to both. Recording, the nice thing about recording is I'm able to say, well, I don't like the video, goes to the trash can. That's it. But if you're streaming live, you can't do that. Yeah. You can only apologize if you made a mistake, for example, and then move on. And I feel that sometimes I'm sure I'll get used to it with time, but I feel a little under pressure when I'm doing a stream because I feel I'm under constant watch by everybody. Oh, I have to be really careful what I say here. But normally I let it just kind of flow, free flow kind of thing. So that's the thing. Other than the technical difficulties I have with streams, I find them to be quite fun because there is an immediate interaction with your audience. So you stream a bit, you do things on the sim, and then you look at your screen, see, and answer a few questions. So I think there is again a lot of reward from doing streams. Recording is definitely a lot less pressure than streams.
Wow. See, I figured I took the easy way out when I stream, because I did try to record as you did and do a review or show a flight. And just hearing you talk about the process of recording it, rewatching it, cutting it, getting rid of it, and start all over again, I was like, wow, I wouldn't be able to do that. I just say, you know what, let the live stream run. If I screw up, then so be it. So, I'm glad you're getting into live streaming also, along with just recording. But recording part of it, I leave it to you guys who are the professionals at this point, definitely. Oh yeah.
I mean, I get it. Like when I first started the whole podcasting thing, there was absolutely a moment when I was just recording and deleting and recording and deleting because it took me so many tries to get it perfectly. So it's kind of like, I feel like live streaming, in a sense, you have to be a lot more confident to do it, but then you get more comfortable with it as you go. And the same is for video, but you become more comfortable with recording video, which makes the process for video a lot easier. So it's kind of like they both balance out at some point, but also just they both have like their perks, like it's great that I'm able to edit everything that I'm saying right now in post and then have everybody see exactly what I want to see. But the
Absolutely.
rawness of flight simming, the rawness of live streaming is always something really great. And I think that's why it's actually just blown up so much in our world in general, is because we really like being able to interact with people and seeing people's true colors. Like a few days ago, Norm looked at the new Sarasota scenery that Vertical Sim Studios released, and he told him on stream that the inside the textures inside of the terminal were animated, and your reaction was just so funny because
Oh, yeah.
you were so shocked by it that you had the most raw, like, oh my god, this is an insane scenery that I'm looking at. And like that rawness, I really enjoyed that, and that is something that maybe you would have edited out or something, I don't know.
True.
But the rawness of live streaming has always been, I think, something that people are really grasped by. And I feel like if you were to continue live streaming Q8, then people would also see those other colors to you that you hinted at people not seeing before, like the people who write the negative reviews, and that would also get a really different response from people, because people react really differently to different things, you know.
It might be the case. Yeah, I think you're right. But look, you're always going to get negative comments.
Absolutely.
And for me, I've always had negative comments from day one. I've had negative comments, but they never really got to me until recently. I'm not sure if it's. I guess it's the stress. y- I have a very stressful job. The day job, the real life job, is a very stressful job and quite demanding in terms of time. So when you come, at finding the time to do something and then getting you get like 100 really nice comments, and then one comment, it's like I kind of sit and stare at it. Says, what is wrong with this guy?
Yeah.
I'll tell you this: if real world pilots are getting bad comments, bad reviews, and just generally bad things said about them, and they're real world pilots, they do this as their day job, and they come and fly the sim, for instance, V1 sim. You understand that there are these people that you're not ever going to get rid of. They're going to be there regardless.
Oh, absolutely.
Every time I fly,
Absolutely.
there's going to be 3 to 5 thumbs down, just because, right? Whatever that
Yeah.
person is. So the thing is, as you said, you have 100 good comments coming your way, and you know that these people really like what you do. Yeah, try your best. Don't even take it on, man. That's just laugh at it. If you could, if you can find a space to say, you know what, I'm not even going to bother with these people, because your reputation and your work speaks for itself. And that's kind of the way I deal with it. And I hope you could do it that way and forget these people, man. Well, that's the word I can use
Absolutely.
anyway. I can't use a different
Yeah.
word. True.
I think the advice that you mentioned, to laugh at it, is definitely very important, and something that I've always done for that reason, because it helps it bother me. It helps in making what is being said bother me less. Like, we got a few negative comments in the beginning of the whole series, and it definitely bothered me, because why wouldn't it? It's like a direct critique of my own work that I've spent a lot of time on. And then I just started to laugh at it and realize that, that's their opinion, and like, if my opinion is different, then that's what really matters at the end. And that really helped with it all. And then as time passed, you saw that the love was a lot greater than the hate that you're getting. Like, there have been a few comments on various websites saying that I have a very monotone and boring voice, which, yeah, kind of true sometimes. But then there's the people who respond to those comments and back them up, and they say these comments are wrong. He may have a really boring voice, but the content that he's putting out is amazing, and that's something that you should be like really looking out for, and ignoring those comments, and drawing your own opinion. And those are the people who are really special, I feel, are the ones who like fight for you and tell you that what you're doing is really worth it, and that you shouldn't be listening to other people, and also help other people make that realization too,
Absolutely.
I have a question for you. If
Please go
we're
ahead.
running, I have your channel up on YouTube. What would you say? What's your most watched video? Is it an airplane? Is it a scenery? What kind of tutorial? What would you say is your most watched video that people responded to more than anything else? Or every time?
That would be the settings video, the complete settings guide for X-Plane. That was one. And the other one was the P3D X-Plane 11 versus P3D version 4. That was another big one. And of course, I anticipated the comments. They're going to be large comments, a large amount of comments on those videos. But yeah, those are probably the most watched on the channel. I find a lot of people. So all the tutorials I make on how to install XLife, anything to do with ATC, settings, top 10 general aviation, top 10 payware, top 10 plugins. Those are the kind of videos that will, and I've mentioned this in a series that I've done many years ago. Those are the kind of videos that people really dig, and they really like those kind of videos. Yeah, I hope I answered your question.
No, you did. One of them had to be Boeing versus Airbus or P3D versus X-Plane. You know, the community gets already.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
oh yeah,
absolutely.
No, but you did answer. Absolutely good. Good to know.
Yeah, those top 10 videos that you have are the ones that I've watched the most religiously, especially the freeware ones. When I was first starting X-Plane, I would immediately go to those. I think I've watched like a few of them like at least 5 times, just like every once in a while going back to them, seeing if I forgot something to add, and then like, you know, living on my life and then going back to them again. Those are definitely the most watched. But I almost had a little chuckle when you mentioned the settings thing, because I I just, it's a funny thing for me, but I always laugh whenever people ask what specs other people have for their simulators, because it happens like every single live stream I watch. I'll just like watch somebody in the comments just saying, "What are your computer specs? What are your computer specs? What are your computer specs?" And I can always see like the streamers being like, "Oh my god, this question again."
Yeah, so I ended up actually putting it in the description now, because it is one of the most asked questions on the channel until this day. So it's actually posted in the description, and then on the website I put in my monitor model, refresh rate, just everything is there, because people are just going to ask,
Well,
and they still ask.
let me ask you, since we're on the podcast, what are your specs for your PC? That's a serious question. You know,
Yeah.
What does your PC look better than mine? You know, but yeah,
that's the thing. I do. So I do spend some time on the settings. I do a lot of fiddling around with the NVIDIA. I built my own PC, so I'm quite proficient in in settings and things like that, and overclocking and changing things in the BIOS, um, and it does help. So when you have that knowledge, it does help. I experiment a lot with, for example, looking at how about I load things on one core, or let me put it on those two cores and see what happens. And I do have a beast of a machine. Well, it used to be about 4 years ago. It's a mid-range machine now with a really good graphic card, but it still does very well.
Yeah, I mean, I laugh at the comments, but at the same time I understand them, because sometimes going through those settings and making them right is so tedious, especially since you have to reload every time. I've spent like hours trying to figure out the right thing, and it's literally just balancing plugins and then looking at my own settings and changing the world objects, seeing how much anti-aliasing I want and all of that. It's a delicate thing, so I get why people want to know it, but it's always really funny to me that that's like the number one question, because I feel like it'd be something else, like something to do with the plane or something like that, but nope. What are your specs? It's interesting to see what people want.
Q8, question for you. What is your coming from X-Plane 10 to X-Plane 11? How big a jump do you think that was for X-Plane itself in the flight sim community?
Well, I think if I look at the history of Xplane, I've been an Xplane user from 10.29, I believe, was the first version of Xplane that I've used. And when Xplane 10.5 came out, I thought it was a big jump. There was a lot of new scenery, and the sim was just looking great. Then when 11 came, I think that was a game changer for Laminar research, simply because first of all they've modernized the user interface. The user interface in Xplane 10 was just terrible. Of course, we got used to
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
After a while, you get used to terrible things, and they become just normal. But they really have thought about the user experience quite a bit before launching Xplane 11. The the UI itself is very modern. Everything is laid out where you can see it, the fonts, the colors, the way they've grouped the information is just outstanding. The usability, the features that they've put in there. There were so many features, by the way, in Xplane 10, but you couldn't find them simply because of the cryptic menus and the poor layout.
Hmm.
So I think in terms of the user experience, it has appealed to a lot more people. And people that were intimidated by the interface in Xplane 10 have found, the new interface to be very easy to follow. And so I think they've started getting more people accepting Xplane after the departure from Xplane 10 to 11. Not to mention, of course, the performance considerations, the performance improvements that they brought into version 11. I think all of those were contributing factors to really increasing their market share. A lot of people I know for a fact that were P3D or FSX users and have moved on to Xplane 11 after it came out. The fact that they have a mobile Xplane 11 that looks outstanding. I have it on my Samsung tablet, and it's just brilliant.
Mm.
So I think they've made all the right calls, they made all the right decisions, and they have a very talented team working behind the scenes to have made those changes in Xplane 11. So I think they're on the right path. And now, of course, the introduction of Vulkan, Metal Vulkan, is again a game changer, I think, for Xplane. The performance gains are outstanding. By the way, some people think that Vulkan is going to make Xplane look better. It has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
So this is just really how how the software is communicating with the graphic card and rendering the scene. So it's going to bring a lot of improvement to the sim, and that will enable more complex add-ons to be introduced into Xplane without having to have a beast of a computer to run it. So I think they're on the right track. I will say this much. Of course, you guys know I'm under a strict NDA with the Microsoft Flight Simulator, so I can't really say much. But I will say this much, and this is my absolute personal view. P3D or Lockheed Martin prepared, even with the new version 5, I believe is probably not going to make it in the long run. I
I
think
agree.
for the foreseeable future, I think it will remain simply because a lot of people have made huge investments into that platform. They will remain, I think, by the way, with 4.5. I don't think a lot of people are going to go to 5 unless they bring up something really, really special. Eventually, I think that platform is going to die.
Mm.
X-Plane 11, I don't think that X-Plane 11 is going to die. I think X-Plane 12 is going to come, and I think X-Plane is there to stay. I will tell you guys one thing based on experience, from my personal experience. There is something about X-Plane when you fly in the X-Plane world. there is something that is unmatched by any other flight simulator that I've tried to date. There's something about the flight model that is just outstanding. It's very fluid, it's very realistic. I remember when I flew the Cessna 152 in real life, and I fly the 172 in X-plane, especially with the, and this is not an advertisement, this
Mm-hmm.
is my true evaluation of the reality expansion pack for the default Cessna 172 by SimCoders. With that add-on, I'll tell you that aircraft is very close to the real thing, very close to a real Cessna, how the real Cessna flies. Now, there is, of course, differences between the 152 and the 172, but it does feel like a real aircraft. The stall behavior, the movement of the aircraft, response to wind, and all of that um, is very, very realistic and very immersive. So I don't think X-Plane is going anywhere, guys. I think X-Plane is there to stay. I think it's going to develop. But the caveat here is that Laminar Research has to probably speed up their development of the platform. They have to bring new things into it, and fix some of the kind of the legacy issues, things like AI, ATC. The community has been really very vocal about these things in X-Plane. The flight model is great, okay,
Mm-hmm.
but those elements of like ATC, especially ATC and AI, and they, for God's sake, do something about those clouds as well. While you're at it, um, I keep Xenviro, by the way, is a very promising product. I love Xenviro. I really miss it now because it doesn't work on the beta. But I think it's I think one weather environment engine that's on the right track. And I think it's a game changer for X-Plane if they can, if they can really make it work without all the performance degradation and fix those artifact issues. I think that's the weather environment engine I want for X-Plane. So a few things here and there, and X-Plane will remain very strong. That's my personal opinion.
So you basically, would you say that the flight modeling where it is now is more than good enough? Concentrate more on the eye candy, weather, clouds, so forth. That's what would be your advice.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
mine too. Mine too. I mean, you said it. I think that I plan to fly Microsoft 2020 and an X-Plane as the two simulators going forward. I do agree with you that P3D FSX is probably going to drop by the wayside when Microsoft 2020 comes out. But X-Plane is special. I mean, just the feel of it, just the smoothness of it in the flight modeling, I love it. But it does need that extra eye candy to compete now with what's coming up based on what we have seen so far. So, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it seems like them introducing Vulcan Metal is their step towards that because I mean you hinted at this, but OpenGL, like the reason why it was so terrible performance wise is because it's a very old rendering engine. It just doesn't have the efficiencies that Vulcan and Metal have today, which is why X-Plane switched to them. But I agree. There's something really special about X-Plane. Like if I am really willing to separate myself from P3D and just go back to X-Plane, even when there are so many great P3D add-ons like PMDG. It's definitely they're doing some great stuff. I love their 777. I fly that thing like almost all the time whenever I go over to P3D. But the fact that I'm still always like going back to X-Plane and always wanting to do like the really special flights on X-Plane, I think really like speaks volumes as to where it's at, and it'll really be interesting to see what comes next. It, there's like a few little hints that you can get as to what they're planning when you ever you look at some of the um patents they filed or deals that they've made with other developers. It looks like they may be looking into doing satellite imagery soon, which would be wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, they bought. I don't know if they bought or if they made a deal with this one satellite imagery company a few months ago or something, or maybe a year ago. It's one of the two. So that might be coming. That would be really great. But I agree that X-Plane has it in realism. It doesn't really have it in eye candy and also sound, honestly. And if they're able to break that and able to bring a really gorgeous simulator and focus on that, then they really have something special and something amazing that is not just going to attract real world pilots who need to train, because I'm always recommended X-Plane whenever I go for flights with any of my what's it called? Any of my flight instructors. I'm always recommended X-Plane. But I feel like if it has that little eye candy aspect to it, then it'll also just attract more people too and more developers as well. Um, but I feel like we're uh, on the way towards having something great on both sides, because a few episodes ago, Norm and I talked about how the flight simulation community as a whole is really in a great place in general, and how we're really getting the best advancements we are right now and the best products that we ever have and the most inspired developers as well. And I feel like if that just keeps on happening, then X-Plane will definitely come that way. We have some great products coming soon. We spoke to them a few weeks ago. They have a great product coming our way, and I am so excited for Rotate's MD11 when that comes out. It looks like they're really trying to make something amazing considering how long they're taking. And those could be some real market disruptors, and we could really see some serious competition start to move over to X-Plane and take up our sphere.
Hopefully.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, the one add-on that I'm really looking forward to is the Dash 8 by FlyJSim.
Yes. Yes.
That's the one. They've been very quiet about it. I've seen a few shots on the screenshots on their website. It's still work in progress, but that's one add-on I want to put my hands on.
Yeah.
Seems to be a favorite of everybody. I haven't gotten the Dash 8 bug yet, but when I see it come out, we'll know what happens.
Yeah.
Quick question for you about how often do you get to do a real world flying in a Cessna or something like that? How often now?
Oh, I actually do it every year. This year is going to be the exception because, of course, the COVID-19, and please, guys, stay safe and keep the social distancing. But normally, every year, I travel with the family to the UK, and I always charter a plane there. I like to fly in Elstree. There is a small aviation center there. Really nice people. So I normally go there and get in a 152 or a Piper. Normally, a Piper 28 is what's available there. And yeah, they let me do whatever, take off, land, and they do all the air traffic control, of course. But the nice thing about Elstree is its location. It's between once you're up, at about 2,000 feet, you can see London Gatwick, and you can also see London Heathrow, and you can see all the big jets going in and out of Heathrow and Gatwick.
Wow.
So it's a very very scenic route around the airport or the airfield. So I do it every year. Some years, if due to family commitments, if I can't do it, then I'll make sure I'll do like the A380 simulator or go to Manchester to do it, or things like that. So yeah, I'm very close to to flying real aircraft. I do it quite often when I get the chance to do it.
Whenever you do like just full flights on your channel, what's your favorite part about that? Personally, my favorite part about flights is just whenever I do a really good landing. Or I really enjoy having like harsher weather because it adds a challenge. It's
Yeah.
just it's boring to land into variable winds and all. But what's your favorite part about doing flights?
That's actually a good question. Believe it or not, the part that I enjoyed the most is the landing part.
Mm.
Um, I feel it's just the most rewarding thing to get the aircraft. You know, those, the what do you call it? The rate, the landing rate. Yeah, when you
Hmm.
get
Right.
it, like when people say, "Oh, it's butter," you know,
Yeah.
that's
No such thing.
that's like really cool.
Hmm.
I don't. Full flights is something I don't really like that much, to be very honest, because the the phase where you actually prepare the aircraft is where I feel people are getting, some knowledge, and they understand now how to set up the FMC or the McDo on an Airbus.
Hmm.
And I try to do different aircraft because, for example, Boeing is very different from an Airbus, very different from an MD-80. So I try to make it as varied as possible. But let me tell you guys, doing a full flight video is the most boring thing in the world. Because the minute you take off and the autopilot takes over, or George takes over,
Yep.
um, there isn't really much to do, and I just click on my button to fast forward the time so that
Hmm.
I'm, 30 nautical miles from top of descent, um, to start configuring the aircraft for approach and landing.
Hmm.
So I was actually thinking the other day, what if I create a lot of videos on landing? So I'll just set up the aircraft at a specific star and begin the approach and landing. Well, people like that. I don't know. Maybe I'll try it. But I've received comments when I cut through things to minimize the time.
Mm.
Oh, why did you cut that part out? I wanted to see this part, and you cut it out. So
Yeah.
maybe creating a timeline is a fix for this. But I'll tell you, unless it's a live stream, if you look at the average duration for videos that are full flights, it's actually very, very low. And
Mm.
what people actually do, they go to takeoff, they watch the takeoff, and then they go and watch the landing, and then they start writing their comments and they leave. So
Hmm.
on
I
a
concur.
40-minute video, they're probably going to watch 2 minutes, 3 minutes tops. They're not going to watch anything more than that, unless somebody is really interested in learning how to set up the aircraft and start it from cold and dark. So it depends on what they want. If they're just there for entertainment, they're just going to look at the takeoff, the landing, and that's it.
Hmm.
But I agree. I concur. When I look at the metrics on the videos that I have up, even if they're live streams or not, when people we watch them, literally as you said, it's taxi, takeoff, and landing. That's it. They cut through
Yeah.
everything else. You see the spike on it. But then as you say, well, somebody goes, well, I wanted to see how you handle it in cruise. Like, okay, so you
Yeah.
can't win no matter what you do. Basically, you can't win. You just have to
Absolutely.
do what makes you happy. I think as a producer, a
That's the
content
name of the
producer,
game. Yeah.
yeah, do what makes you
Yeah.
happy. Definitely.
I feel like that landing video idea would be really successful though, because for me, when I was first learning how to fly, um, it wasn't until actually I was in the real Cessna 172 and doing it myself, I had a lot of trouble learning how to crab and all of the other types of landings that you can do in crosswinds as well. And I think that would be something really interesting for people to get a hang of if you were to like perhaps show what you were doing with your controls. I think people would really be into that because it's also just hard to find a general tutorial on how to do stuff like that for flight simulation stuff. It's easy for other like categories, like real world categories. I've seen many videos where an Airbus pilot will be on the plane and they'll be teaching you how to do it. But I think that would be something that people would really love for sure. I think that's a great idea.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe I'll try it. Maybe I'll give it a shot. Yeah.
Yeah, do your landing sequences. Do, 3 landings, same airport. Then you can advance it to difficult landings and crosswind landings and so forth and so on. I think it'll
Yeah,
be
and do
awesome.
it like with different with different aircraft perhaps, and yeah, that might work. That might actually work.
Now, you're obviously not sticking to a regular upload schedule, and I respect that a lot. It was something I had to learn in the beginning when making this podcast, that sometimes regular upload schedules really stress you out and take the whole fun out of everything. Because I was uploading this every Monday, and it was just sucking it out of me, and I really wasn't enjoying it. And now that we have this more loose schedule, it's a lot nicer. But in terms of your future videos, you mentioned that you have alpha access. Will you be covering Microsoft Flight Simulator and continuing to cover X-Plane 11?
Oh yes, of course. I think I'll be doing both. I'm rethinking actually the format of a lot of the videos, even including my review videos.
Mm.
So I'll let you on this. So for the reviews, for the most part, in the past, I used to do um, like a walk around of the exterior, then the interior. Then I take it for a short flight around the same airport vicinity, and then take it back and land.
Mm.
But maybe I will actually do short, full flights. For example, we can do one from Corfu to a nearby island
Yep.
if it's a GA aircraft. And then I can show, for example, the quick flight planning through SkyVector and things like that. And while I'm doing that, I will review the aircraft. I'm thinking about that review format because maybe people will get a little more appreciation out of the aircraft if you actually show all the features and actually also teach them how to fly it. So that's one thing that on the Vulcan video that I've done for Just Flight aircraft, a lot of people said we'd like to know how to start it up from its cold and dark state. And I'll tell you one thing about this community: people don't read. Um, I don't think it's just the community. I think people in general don't want to read. They just want everything to be, ready
Video fed.
for them.
Yep.
Yeah, they want to see it visually. People are very visual. They're becoming more visual. So instead of going through the manual, I'll do it for you guys. I'll read the manual, go through the agony,
Right.
and then and then I'll do a video. So I'm thinking about the review format of those videos. Again, I've told you I'm already reconsidering the format of the full flights, and maybe do things maybe a little more interesting, like landing at a really dangerous airport, and do things like that. Maybe people will dig that a lot more than watching a 40-minute video, which, by the way, I have a couple of them ready to go. I just haven't uploaded them.
Mhm.
They were from some time back, but I decided just they're not, they're probably not going to get enough views, so I'm not going to upload them. So Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, definitely, I am going to be doing a lot of videos there, especially when it's first launched, or when we get permission from Microsoft to start creating content. Uh, I can tell you, it's quite a departure from anything that we've seen so far. So definitely, it's going to be worth the coverage. I think a lot of people are going to have gazillion of questions on how to do this and how to do that. And I think we're kind of privileged to have been to still be alpha testers, because you come to learn a lot of things about the sim and how to configure it and the different options and the effect of different settings on the scene. So yeah, I'd like to share that with the community for sure.
Yeah.
It's good to know.
Um,
Awesome.
is there anything that we haven't spoken about that you want our listeners to know, or any questions you have for us, or anything?
No, I just really enjoyed being with you guys. I lost track of the time. So Thank you very much for having me and for giving me the opportunity to speak to you guys and tell you a little bit about myself and experience with the flight simulation. It's been real fun. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely great to have you on board. This was very informative. Get to learn a lot more about your process and what your thoughts are on the whole simulator community. So thank you so much for being a part of the podcast.
My absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for being on, and I'm really excited to see what you do next, and it's been great talking to you.
Likewise, guys. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.